was there the day that Jesus walked into the temple. He just stood there at first, almost as in disbelief. And then I saw it. I saw that fire growing in his eyes. I'd come from Galilee to the place where God said he'd meet us. Did it feel like a scam? Yeah. I was never able to afford a lamb for my sacrifice, so I had to settle for one of those overpriced pigeons. As a young wife and mother, there's a word you never expect to be called. Widow. I didn't realize how safe I'd felt with my husband around until he was gone. And then it just felt like being exposed on every side with nothing in between your babies and a world of vipers. But me. Just me. So I stood there that day in the temple and I watched as Jesus grabbed a whip and drove those businessmen out of the temple, poured their money on the ground. But more than that, there was something about the expression on his face. I recognized it. He swung that whip like vipers were threatening his kids. He said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Took me 3 years to figure out what he meant. Slow learner. He wasn't talking about the building. That was a place where dishonest men put their grimy fingerprints all over God's glory. They defiled the intimate process of worshiping Him. That day wasn't about destruction. It was about hope. Because now, knowing God is all about Jesus. As I think about that day back in the temple, and I remember what Jesus did and how He did it, it felt like being rescued. Life can still be brutal. My kids' appetites are still growing. I still cry a lot. But He made a place for me to be still, where rest and trust meet right there at God's feet. And the price of that access, it's paid because of Jesus. He conquered death, and that's how I make it through life.
The story of Jesus driving the money changers from the temple occurs in all 4 Gospels. It is the time of Passover. This is a big celebration for the people of Jerusalem. Imagine 3,000 to 4,000 people gathered, plus livestock. People would bring their bulls, their cows, sheep, and goats for the sacrifice. The Pharisees, standing by, were more worried about how to worship, where to worship, how long to worship, what to say, and how to kneel. The Pharisees seemed to be the rule makers and the rule keepers, and enjoyed the drama of being sought after. They would have been inside the temple showing people how it's done, and letting them know if they didn't do it right. The religious leaders of that time would have taken their cut of whatever the money changers were taking in. If you didn't have livestock, you could buy a dove, but inside the temple, they would only accept temple currency. So in the temple courtyard, you had people who would trade your money for the proper currency so that you could buy a dove for the sacrifice. But the ones making the trade would often take advantage of the people, sort of like a currency exchange. But they were the ones that were setting the rates, and the rates never went down. Like Super Bowl tickets, or on big holidays, the rates would just keep going up. Then there was a noise from outside the temple. The people were awakened. Jesus observed people being unfairly treated in the name of worshiping Yahweh. Jesus was upset that the people were coming to the temple were being marginalized and didn't have a way around it. Jesus was upset that the holy place designed to bring us closer to God was being used sinfully. They made worship dirty. There's a reason this event is often called the cleansing of the temple. Many leaders and the changers had spent a lot of time and money and reputation investing in keeping the system working just as it is. Then along comes Jesus. Jesus says no. Jesus said God is doing something brand new. God has not given up on you. Jesus is saying, wake up. Jesus is calling each of us to wake up. The lot in life that you were told was yours and you just had to live with it, Jesus says no. There is good news. Greed, power, rules, corruption, and intimidation have no power. Not anymore. We're going to do something else. People believed they had to endure suffering in order to get their reward later. The woman in this video says she wasn't afraid of watching Jesus. She said it was like being rescued. Jesus tears down the old and builds something new. Jesus gives her and us a new understanding about God. Unfair lament, Jesus says no more. We are going to do something new. I'm giving you relief. I'm giving you a new start. This is about reassurance. When you've hit bottom and you can't take any more, Jesus says, destroy this temple and I will rebuild it.